take these away from you.
Okay, graduation.
Of course. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I didn't realize I was on audio and my kiddo's talking.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Hill, Tom, I think we have everyone either on or in the room.
Laptop, turn your laptop. Good. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's having a decent day out there. It's difficult to believe that it's already the mid of April. Everyone had to think about that because it feels like the mid of April already, doesn't it? Yes, yes. Can we all give a Zoom hands up and clap for Dr. Evelyn Hill, who is now Commissioner Evelyn Hill? So Commissioner.
Congratulations, Commissioner Hill.
Woo! Good job.
Thank
Thumbs
you.
up.
We are still in the fire hose stage of the operation, so thank you for that and appreciate Tom for even mentioning it. Thank you.
I believe, well, we were having a conversation up here at the table before the meeting opened, and Rachel had some experiences that have occurred just recently with the warming shelter and Frank Williams, and we've all experienced that just awful, brutal cold that's been out there. But I've been fortunate, and I hope you all have been in the comforts of our own home, but not everyone has been so blessed to be able to do that. And, you know, thank God for the warming shelter, and we'll get an update on that. And thank God for Frank Williams. Rachel, do you mind just kind of sharing with the group what you were sharing with Dr. Hill and I?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I was sharing about how we have been really not only Frank Williams, but Crosslines and the warming shelter during this cold snap. We've been open for the past 10 days consistently every single day. I have staff who are about ready to drop. I know Rachel Russell's on the call from Crosslines, and really between the warming shelter and Frank Williams and Crosslines, people would leave the warming shelter that opened a little early and shut down a little late, just so we could cover gaps in time so people would not be out in the cold. People would go right from the warming shelter to both Frank Williams and Crosslines. And the fire department and EMS were also, as they were driving around and in the community, were bringing people to both of those locations who were just out walking around in the cold. I was sharing about one person who they brought in who was walking around on the Saturday that I think it started out at 4 below or something, and the wind chill was probably 20 below. And she just had socks on and was walking around because she had nowhere else to go. And someone brought her in, and she was just in tears because her feet hurt so bad. She could not take her socks off because we wanted to give her warm, dry socks and shoes. She couldn't even take her socks off because her skin was just so raw and peeling, and had EMS just take her right to the hospital. We had, I have to give a shout out also to fire and EMS because they were so responsive and so compassionate to people throughout this snap, and took so many people to the hospital and provided care to so many people. We all worked really well as a team. So it's a really good example of our community coming together and serving people who are not as fortunate as us to wake up in a warm bed and not have to go outside. So, you know, my staff and staff at Crosslines and staff who staff the warming shelter, I just want to thank all of them and the community who supported us in getting that open.
Rachel, I see, Rachel Russell, I see you're on. Is there an update you can give us on the warming shelter, please?
Hi there, good afternoon, everyone. And I just to echo the remarks provided by Rachel, number one today, that yes, very much a community and collaboration over what we did not know was going to be 2 weeks, and folks are tired. And so not only our unhoused friends, but also our staff. And so just kudos and so much gratitude and thank you goes to many of them. My colleague Rob is not around me right now to give the actual numbers, but so don't quote me all the way. But I believe the last time I spoke to him, we have seen over 135 folks over the 13 nights that we were open these last 2 weeks, as well as we know 4 folks are working on getting housed at Shalom House. And there are other actions in place to really continue to have those housing-based conversations. We had 2 families present during this long streak. We have since been able to connect them with providers to help them navigate that. But just very much in a season of gratitude for the collaboration. As mentioned, we've had EMS and fire there, but we've also been able through the paramedicine program to have Jess, who is facilitating the paramedicine program for the fire department there every night to help with some of those preemptive symptoms for other things. And so that has been great and just a really great collaboration as mentioned. So thanks for the opportunity to speak. We know winter is not over, and so there is still an opportunity for folks to get involved, to come see the shelter and to continue to help out this season. So thank you.
Rachel, I've got a couple questions if I may, and I would like to have a shout out and thank you to the unified government for really blanketing the announcement of the warming shelter. I think all that messaging was very, very positive. All the other social service agencies did a great job. But Rachel, when you talk about 135 people in 2 weeks, that's not, those are a lot of times the same individuals each and every night. Is that the correct statement?
No, so that's 135 unique individuals. And so what that means is that some folks, and we've talked about this, some folks just need shelter temporarily as they navigate where their next step is. Some folks, there was some diversion that happened. So if they we were able to purchase 2 bus tickets for 2 folks so some of that is the transientness of the population, but some of that is also I'm here for a couple of nights and then I'm able to go stay with family, or I'm able to, or I go back on the Missouri side where I actually should be because that's where I'm getting services. And so some of that is those housing conversations, but yes, it is 135 unique individuals.
Excellent. And then just remind everyone that's in the meeting today, the hours of operation and kind of what the temperatures need to be when the warming shelter is open.
Yeah, so our threshold is 25 degrees or colder. Sometimes wind chill and precipitation can play a role in that. Excitingly, this year we do have a text service that if you would be interested in knowing when the shelter is open or when it's not, it sends a message out every day at 8:30. And so if folks want to get connected, send myself or my colleague Rob an email and we'll get you on that line. And yeah, so 25 degrees, 552 state. We are back to our normal operating hours of 6 to 8 a.m. And yeah, luckily we have a heat wave right now. So we're not open currently, but we expect looking forward to open maybe at some point next week.
And Rachel, just remind everyone what type of resources and volunteers and things that folks can still sign up and help with.
Yeah, so we currently have a boot drive taking place, and so we are accepting donations for that. There is an Amazon list to assist with boots, but also in the morning, folks get grab and go breakfast items, and snacks throughout the evening. And so we have an Amazon list for that, as well as There is a link to sign up to volunteer to help with the hospitality across the dinner session or portion of the evening from 5:45 to 7:45. And so I am happy to share. I will drop those before I have to depart. I do have a school board meeting today, so I will have to depart this meeting a little early, but I will drop those links in the chat, or feel free to reach out to myself, Rachel@crosslines.org, or you can reach out to my colleague Rob@crosslines.org as well.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you to everyone that's providing these life-saving services throughout this brutal cold. And thanks for everything that everyone does throughout the entire year.
Oh, real quick, Rachel, is there anybody that is tracking how much this actually costs overall to run the warming shelter, with the cost for service, EMS, fire and everything? Does anybody track those kind of numbers, that kind of data for us?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and one that has continually come up. And so our team is working on or has been working on a rough estimate of what it costs staff as well as food. That is something, as we wrap up this season, we will try to pull some of those numbers, both for what it costs every night, but then what it costs at each season, just to better be able to share both the impact, but also the reason why it's important for us to find real-time solutions outside of just the coldest days of the year. So,
Right. Yeah, that would definitely help us tell the story. I mean, because it's a story that needs to be told.
yeah.
Thank you.
And I will say that across the public safety and the UG, I think that story of collaboration is one big piece, but also the story of the true actual cost of what it costs for folks to continually be unhoused in our community and not have access to affordable housing is another conversation as well. So,
Rachel, one last question. What is the capacity of the shelter on any given night?
yeah, so our capacity is 40. However, during this cold stretch, we were able to get to 50. I will tell you, we put about 14 folks up in a hotel, and I want to give a big shout out to the Hilton Garden Inn, who was a really great partner over the last 2 weeks to make this possible. And so kudos to them and shout out to them, and thanks to the folks over there. And so we will go back to our 40. When we have 50 people in there, it's real tight and behaviors, because it's not truly designated for 50 folks. It is meant for 40, but we will do the work we can and continue to advocate for other solutions and more space. So as you all know, the homeless problem has not gotten better, it has only gotten worse. And so we need to figure out some long-term sustainable solutions. So.
Thank you, Rachel. Commissioner Hill, would you like to visit about the PowerPoint that we're going to talk about?
Sure. I'm going to share my screen. And before I do that, I just want to say thank you again to Frank Williams Center and Crosslines and all those who have been active in helping the homeless. And I know Willa Gill Center, Ms. Andra Penn and her crew have been consistently working with those individuals also. Just like to say thank you to them also. I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. Let's see. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay, all right, great. So one of the things that we have been challenged to do is to make a presentation to the commission. And we need the okay from you all, the community, to say, yes, this is what we want. So what we did was just put together a PowerPoint, and as you go through, as we go through, be sure and take notes of things that might be incorrect, other ideas that need to be injected, or something that needs to be deleted. Because we want this to be from the community. You will see specifically 4 different recommendations, but we'll go through this pretty quick, and then feel free to make comments. You can stop me along the way. That's fine. Okay. All right. Oops, that was not the right one. Okay, here we go. Several areas to address: the location of the Willa Gill Center and the kitchen, unhoused population, shelters for family, warming and cooling center, affordable housing, mental health services. Urgent need, location for the Willa Gill Center. When we put this together, we put down there the area, consider 5th Street immediately north of Minnesota by the former United Way building. And then on this slide, you can kind of see that area. From what I understand, that area is not available there. And I need to confirm that with Irene maybe, that this area is not available. Could you turn your mic on? They can hear it too.
From what I understand, as far as the last recommendation, apparently from this group, was because this was off and there was another location that was also 9th in Minnesota that's no longer available, but 38th?
38th Street, okay?
That's the one that seems to be kind of the focus of attention, depending upon the recommendation.
Okay. So as we are going through this, I'd like to hear from Miss Andra Penn with 38th Street location. Now, Irene, one of the questions that might come into play is, well, a couple. Number one, or is the UG building us a building out there on 38th Street? How much is that going to cost? Are you all the expenses go to you? What's the timeline? I mean, I can go on and on, but I'm sure you're not prepared for all that. But
And I think you asked the mayor those questions, if I'm not mistaken. And what was his response? I think the UG is respectfully wanting to make sure that they're partners in this. The idea and I would say urgent isn't probably the word to use, but we know that Willa Gill needs to move. But I think the way the mayor looks at it is it's an opportunity. So if we're gonna move a location like Willa Gill with food, you know, that particular type, we're also going to have to respectfully look for next year for the warming center, because that facility will no longer be available. That is new company moving in the springtime and gave us the option to be able to use it again this year. So if we really kind of take a look, and some of the discussion has been, look at what Johnson County just did. They bought an old La Quinta,
Okay.
is that, and they're also taking a look at the Perkins that's next door, and really kind of taking a look at opportunity and what kind of exists. Then there will be others that I think will say, where is, when we talk about place and when we talk about where folks are and where the need is, there's another piece to this that I spoke to Pam this morning about, is that we also have this option that the UG has. What is the woman's name? Julia?
Orlando.
Yes, that free opportunity to look at a vision, research, planning. We don't have to get this perfect, but we do need the opportunity for the current collaboration that's happening really well, to be able to expand and to take a look at current and future needs. By centering, of course, the population that we're going to serve. So I think there are two aspects to it. How do we move the unified government to make that commitment of somebody who's done it before and done it well, willing to help this group or others, that's not at the table, because we did start to talk about who's not at the table. But what I can tell you is, I don't know that it means building a new building. I do know there's dollars set aside specifically for the move of Willa Gill. Mayor does see it as a partnership. But if we think about some other opportunities, it doesn't mean that everything will be the commitment of the UG. If we think bigger, more vision and more opportunity. So there is money put aside, especially for the move of Willa Gill. I think the mayor's looking for this group to give a good recommendation and then even taking it further. Does that help?
Yes, that helps a lot. Thank you. Because you answered questions we didn't have any answers to at all, like who's going to pay for it? Is it going to be built or what? Thank you. That was helpful. Miss Andra Penn, I want to give you an opportunity to weigh in here.
All right. Well,
Okay.
thank you. Hello to everybody. In terms of the location at 38th Street, currently, as I understand, those are just vacant lots. So if there's money being set aside to move Willa Gill, it's important that we know whether a building is going to be constructed or if there's another building on 38th somewhere that the UG has considered. The location, if a building was built on 38th, would be doable. It would still get people, people would be able to access the building. They would be able to get there. Has there been a determination made regarding the Metro buses, if they're going to still provide free rides, or have they gone back to people paying for the bus fees yet? Anybody know?
No, there is a discussion. I will tell you, mayor over in Kansas City, Missouri does not want it, and it will be by jurisdiction. So
Okay.
Wyandotte County will have to make a determination, but I think there is discussion among Wyandotte, Johnson, and Kansas City in regard to making that, or in other words, putting the fares back in place.
Okay. And the reason, thank you for that answer. The reason I ask is because in some previous conversations about relocating Willa Gill, that was one of the concerns as to how would people get to a location further west than where we're located now? Because the UG strategically decided to have this building that we're in now built here because it was geographically close for people to get to the necessary institutions like Department of Children and Family, Social Security, at that time, the Kansas Legal Services, and, the Housing Authority. So that was one of the concerns, is the transportation. Is that going to be available? There was discussion that there was some way that could be considered with some previous discussions with the mayor. And in terms of the location, 38th Street, again, since 5th in Minnesota is not available anymore. Now, and 9th in Minnesota, I'm not sure what what building they were talking about. We looked at the one at 9th and State that was previously the Kansas Community College, and that one's not doable based on the amount of money. I understand
Yeah,
that
yeah.
to renovate.
Yeah, Andrea, that was the one. I'm sorry, I had the wrong.
Oh, okay, all right, thanks, no problem. All right, so that's where we are. We're still waiting to hear too. Hopefully, you know,
Okay,
hopefully something great will come out of it.
Hey, Andre, I think you and the mayor have an upcoming meeting with Levert and the mayor, correct?
That's correct. Mrs. Pamela Smart, our executive director, and myself are scheduled to meet with the mayor and Levert on January the 30th.
Commissioner Hill, I know that Julia Orlando is contracted with KDADS to provide some consultation. I do think it should be a recommendation of this committee that we move forward and find some way to bring her in with some consultation. I know that this discussion about Willa Gill is timely, and so we have, you know, kind of a deadline before we have to do that. I also think that, especially on some of those things that Irene mentioned, yeah, I just talk really. So the recommendation is that we do contract and do consultation. The city does consultation with Julia Orlando. I think this committee should move forward that recommendation. She's already contracted with KDADS. I don't know if there's a way for us to utilize time out of that contract, or if that would involve a separate contract. I know that the discussion about moving Willa Gill is timely, but if we're looking, if we want to look at doing some of those things like they're doing in Johnson County, they actually did that in Kansas City, Missouri also, take some of those hotels and convert them. You know, I think that that might be something that would be less costly than having brand new buildings, and something that we would have to look at as a regional plan. And that she's been able to do those things in New Jersey. She's also been able to do things in her location where there have been plans to revitalize downtown and also find somewhere for people who are houseless to go. And she's been able to work with community providers and service providers and downtown businesses to accomplish both of those goals. And I think that she could have some valuable insights into how we can move forward as a community here.
thank you. And we have, that is, just excuse me real quick, that is already on the,
Very
we are
good.
all over that. We want Miss Julia Orlando here ASAP. And
Mhm.
we have asked the county administrator and the mayor about a timeline when we could get her in, and we have not heard yet back from that, but so I know that they are aware.
That will have to come out of the county administrator's office in regard to a consultant kind of contract. So I know that Commissioner Bynum and Randy Colstrom has mentioned that more recently to the county administrator's office.
Okay.
And you have Dwayne that's on, has his hand raised.
Okay,
Call on Dwayne.
Hmm.
Dwayne, right.
oh, Dwayne, your
Yes,
hand's up, yes.
yes, thank you. Yeah, because that was one thing that we've been having some discussions about, is about in the move of Willa Gill. But how about if we as a UG do think long-term and the long game, and look at doing some permanent supportive housing that has the wraparound services incorporated in it, where Willa Gill can be there, the Frank Wright community piece that's in there. And it'll also serve as the place where we can do the warming shelter or the cooling shelter, you know, even, but we do need seriously some permanent supportive housing, because we really want to develop a strategy where we're actually working towards moving people from being unhoused, moving our neighbors from being unhoused, you know, into a more permanent situation. And using that money that is set aside, you know, we can leverage that money into something that's much bigger. You know, and so I just beg that we focus on that, because as Ms. Russell mentioned, the numbers at the cooling shelter, I mean, that's pretty astounding. And there's probably so many more that are not coming. And so I just want to encourage us that we begin, like I said, if it's meeting with Ms. Orlando or, you know, consultant, but please, let's look long game at this, you know.
Mr. Albright, thank you so much. And what I'm gonna cancel the PowerPoint, so you all feel free to say something. But before I cancel, I just want you to know there are other recommendations in regards to the housing. One is the Eden Village, which is the tiny homes. That's one recommendation. The other recommendation was affordable housing with wraparound services and also the shelter. So this is the Topeka shelter, which has a shelter for women and children. And I just came up with a name, Wyco Family Shelter. And then you can also see the Warming and Cooling Center. These are all recommendations. Here is the affordable housing piece. Let's see. This one is the Systemic Change Alert Howard Community Development Director. I think the UG has recently done that to
Yes.
some extent. We'll get into that a little bit more. And then the Landlord Risk Mitigation Fund. And then, of course, Miss Julia Orlando would help us put the whole plan together. So the 4 recommendations then, number 1 was the, thank you. Number 1 was Gill, the tiny homes along with the affordable housing, the family shelter, and the warming and cooling centers. So the whole plan to go around that, we were hoping that Miss Orlando could help us pull all those entities together. So the floor is open for more comments,
Rachel,
suggestions.
if you're still there, do you want to talk about the landlord mitigation fund and where that's at?
Hi there. Yes, I can. So it's exciting news to share with you all, and hopefully in the next week or two, we will get an official press release. So thanks to funding from Health Forward Foundation, they have funded the landlord tenant mitigation fund. And so we had to do some wordsmithing to really show that this fund is really centered around helping tenants and folks get access and permanency to housing. And so that fund is going to be facilitated very similar to our last conversation by the Housing Authority. Crosslines and Kim Wilson Housing are sub-grantees of that funding. And so for folks who are looking to access funding or need assistance with helping folks access that funding, those 3 entities will kind of serve as the steers of the ship. And so we are excited about that. This is 1-year funding. And so our main goal right now is to both develop the program and get it off the ground, because we will have until November to kind of show and prove that by reducing barriers, by having access to funding for landlords, but also for some of those high utility deposits and stuff, we can actually get people into housing. And so more to come on that. I know the three of the partners are meeting later next week to kind of really map out and be able to provide more guidance to the community about what that fund looks like. But yeah, major win to wrap up 2023. And so I look forward to sharing more of that information with you all next time.
Congratulations. That's a lot of hard work and a lot of years to that effort. Nice job.
Yes,
Rachel,
and
what-
thank you to this group of folks for being a part of what that would look like and how we can execute that. And so, yeah, we will definitely be leaning into you all once we get these MOUs and final contracts all shaped up to share the word and to help us get folks housed. So.
Rachel Andrepian, would you restate the partners for this particular project of the landlord tenant mitigation?
Yeah,
Cross
so
lines.
it is cross lines. I think the actual contract says Wyandotte Behavioral Network, and the Housing Authority of
Okay.
Wyandotte County. Mhm.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to acknowledge Commissioner Bynum is with us, along with our Assistant County Administrator, Mr. Unhoused. Is that correct? Did you all want to have any words? Okay.
This is Alan. I just wanted to congratulate Rachel, and she was actually chairing a panel discussion with Mid-America Regional Council in the First Suburbs Coalition last week. And I think some of the feedback as they're thinking about putting that program together is, Johnson County has a landlord mitigation fund. And to the extent that there can be alignment regionally on the kind of how those things work, that makes it easier for landlords who often own properties in multiple jurisdictions. And part of the challenge that we heard in that conversation from landlords was, to the extent that those can be the same, it makes it a lot easier for them to utilize them and to comply with them.
Are there any other questions in regards to the PowerPoint? Is this what we, the community, would like to present to the commissioners? It looks like, for starters, go ahead, Tom.
Commissioner, I'm sorry to interject, but there were a couple questions in the chat that I think we may want to address before we kind of move forward. Greg, your question about 38th Street, I believe that the cross street would be Minnesota. So it's really on the south side of Minnesota, east of 30. Oh, so south side of Minnesota, east of 38th Street, I believe is where the majority of that vacant land is located. And then Alyssa, great question and comment about consolidating all of the housing applications into one application. I don't think I can answer that. I will allow the unified government personnel to answer that one.
I can read it.
Yes, what about consolidating all UG housing programs into one single application and department? Right now, we have minor home repair at livable neighborhoods, community development, lead removal and health department, weatherization and BPU, plus aging's program.
I guess one comment I would make is that, some of those funds are dedicated from other places like HUD. and for example, aging, their money is coming from Older Americans Act funding from the federal government to the state. So there may be reasons, antiquated reasons, that it's certainly worth a look at what can we make more efficient, but then what would be the things that would keep us from doing that. The home repair done through community development is CDBG money from HUD. It has very specific parameters around it. Maybe if we just had a clearinghouse, to her point, a department that managed and handled all that. But again, some of that might be backroom stuff as far as like the bucket of money, what bucket is that money come from? And maybe making it more seamless on the front end is a good idea. I think it's definitely worth having a look at internally.
Yeah, and I would echo that, and I see Kayla's here now. I would echo that some of that is that, but I also would echo efficiency is what we're aiming for from a unified government that is struggling to hire and retain employees. If I'm not wrong, if my reading does me well, livable neighborhood salaries also come from CDBG or community development dollars. And the purpose of community development is to be involved with community. And that is exactly what Livable Neighborhoods does. And so I think on the front end, while it may have made sense years ago for them to be at the Neighborhood Resource Center, community involves neighborhoods and neighborhoods make up communities. And so I don't know what that internal conversation looks like. But even when you think about pulling salaries, there's already administrative dollars, but then you're taking other dollars and you're pulling more salary amounts, then less money is going to the work of the community. And so I think there is a bigger conversation. If at some point in one of these meetings, we could have someone come and break down how that community development lens looks, as well as how Livable Neighborhoods operates. I think there is a potential for a recommendation that be further looked at from the UG perspective as it relates to efficiencies and what have you. My last ask before I have to jump off is, Dr. Hill, if you or Tom could get together and put those recommendations not in a PowerPoint, but kind of bullet them out for us so we can see them all on paper. I appreciate the visual learning. I also just struggled with like the slide maneuvering and like what was information and what was the actual
Recommendation.
Yes, thank you. And so that would just be helpful for me to be able to give better feedback of, okay, you were showing the Topeka Center, but you were just showing that to support the recommendation, blah, blah, blah. So thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm happy to put together a easy to read bullet pointed document for our recommendation. Tom? Okay. We did. Is she coming next week? Is she?
I don't think they heard you say that. So please go ahead.
Yeah, so this Allen House, I heard that Julia Orlando came up early in the conversation, I think was one of the recommendations. And I think that relates to kind of creating a strategy, an overall strategy. Is that, am I intuiting that right? So just to kind of give an update to this group. So the Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services, KDADS, is kind of the lead state agency for the governor on homelessness. It's worth noting that she has put $40 million into her proposed budget at the state level for matching funds for localities to deal with homelessness. So, we'll see what the budget sausage making process produces, but it's at least positive that it was in the governor's budget as introduced. The other part is that KDADS has offered us to fund 2 positions related to homelessness for a period of, I think, 3 years. And so we are working with KDADS now on finalizing kind of the scope of work and what that would look like so that we can move forward with hiring those. We now have, and I noticed in the chat there, Kay Sharp, who's our interim community development director. So we do have some additional internal capacity now to help to kind of manage those conversations and keep that moving forward. So, and then Julie Orlando is funded by the state, by KDADS under that contract. And the state has offered some of her time, consulting time, to assist in the development of that kind of planning, which I believe she's also doing with, I think, Lawrence and perhaps some others. So it's kind of a combination now of the consulting time that has available to provide to us, and then as well, the additional sort of full-time capacity that I think can also be helpful in bringing to bear in creating a more comprehensive plan that would then allow this group and others to take that to other stakeholders and say, here's our approach, and here's what we need resource-wise in order to be able to execute against that, whether that's our state partners or federal partners, other regional partners. So that's the context, and I guess in which her name kind of comes up and how we can access her and those other resources that the state is trying to bring to bear to support.
So just so I understood what you said state, local, and maybe possibly federal dollars?
Hello?
No.
So the
What's going on? I'm on
the
the-
Julie Orlando Consulting is through the state, through the Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services, or KDADS. They have the contract with her, and they're willing to give a certain portion of her time under that contract to us in support. They're also, at the state level, KDADS is also providing funding for 2 full-time positions focused around homelessness in Wyandotte County. One to support more of a regional look, I think, and one to focus more on kind of addressing homelessness more directly. We'll just kind of see how the scope of work shapes out on those positions. And then I think the hope is that from that can be developed a kind of a full comprehensive or strategic plan, and then that can be shopped to other partners for more resources, whether that's to the state or whether that's to the federal government. Depending on what that kind of looks like, does that look like beds? Does that look like non-congregate housing? Does it look like mental health services? There's a kind of a full range of stuff, but it's harder to make that ask to state and federal partners in the absence of a plan. And so that's hopefully what we can get out of this process.
And so what is the timeline for her coming?
That's a good question. I'll find out more information on that as well in terms of her and the other 2 folks. So now that we've got additional internal capacity, that will help us accelerate the work in this area.
Okay, thank you. That's good news. Thank you.
Alan, I've got a couple questions, and before I ask the questions, I want to say thank you for being here and thank you for giving us that update. We've been talking about Julia Orlando, and I feel like she is going to solve all of our problems. So no pressure on her and all the outcomes, but anything that we can do to help move that along a little quicker, we are at the county administrator's service. In respect to the 2 positions, that is exciting, wonderful news. And kudos to Governor Kelly for identifying this issue across the state of Kansas and really putting a lot of money into the budget. My question is there opportunities in constructing those 2 funded positions to get feedback from a lot of the experts that are in this room and on Zoom right now? Because, we've got a lot of experts that are doing that on the streets outreach, and they're understanding it far better than I ever could. And I think there's a wealth of information that could help shape those positions if the county would be amenable to that.
Yeah, I think absolutely we would. Yeah.
Kayla, I noticed your input online. It says, I'm not sure that our salary comes from CDBG, but the task force does get CDBG money.
And to clarify, I should have put Livable Neighborhoods Task Force, not this task force that we're on now. So when Rachel was making her comment about possibly looking at combining services or departments or things like that, she had thought maybe our salary came from CDBG. I don't believe that's the case, but Livable Neighborhoods Task Force does have a contract with community development and receiving community development block grant money. So just that clarification.
Thank you. I just didn't want you to think the task force, Tom and I, receive funding, because we don't.
No.
Okay, all right. Okay, any other questions? Anything else you'd like to see as far as recommendations that we present to the commissioner and the mayor? Okay, would anybody like to be a part of making the presentation with Tom?
I see what you did there, Commissioner.
Okay, I see everybody's hands are up. We will get back to you on that. All right, put it back in Tom's hands. Thank you.
Folks, I would ask if when you're driving home this evening and you're pondering it, and after you receive the bullet points of the recommendations from Commissioner Hill, if you have further clarification or if you have additional recommendations, please, please, please reach out to Commissioner Hill and I, and we'll be happy to consider those and discuss them with the entire task force and get those recommendations to the mayor's office and the administrator's office and the commissioners. So we're going to close down a little bit early. Before we do that, I always like to go around the room because we've got such great resources. Does anyone have anything to announce? Does anyone have excess resources they would like to share with other groups or nonprofits? Does anyone need anything that maybe the rest of us could help with?
I have an announcement on this Thursday. We have the Livable Neighborhoods Task Force meeting at the Neighborhood Resource Center. We also have it available via Zoom. If you need that information, let me know. And that starts at 9:00 a.m. and it goes to 10:30. We'll have updates about our Livable Neighborhoods strategic plan, as well as updates from different departments within the UG and any community comments that are presented. So happy to have anybody there that would like to attend. Our strategic plan this year is focusing on neighborhood connectedness as well as neighborhood level public safety. So those are some topics that we'll be talking about.
And Alan House again, I apologize if you all covered this before we got here. I guess two things, just to let folks know that the point in time count is happening this week. So that starts at 9 a.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, and runs till 9 a.m. Thursday. That's regionally coordinated by Greater Kansas City Coalition in Homelessness and locally by Cross Lines. So just want to recognize that's happening. And also wanted to recognize publicly and thank the organizations that got together around the severe cold weather that we just went through and were able to kind of flex hours in different ways to make sure that we had 24/7 support for folks who were homeless during that period. So we didn't have any gaps where people were at risk. So appreciated everybody kind of being able to get together and work through that and be flexible in making sure that we did have that coverage. So, and we did for the entirety of that very cold spell, have that 24-hour coverage.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for all your service. Thank you for all that you do. In my role with Hillcrest, I'm afforded the opportunity to travel across the metropolitan area working with Johnson County communities and Eastern Jackson County and Clay County and Kansas City, Missouri and Jackson County. And homelessness, unhoused, affordable housing has never in my career been more at the forefront of conversation. So there is just that absolute recognition that it is a crisis. So it's a shame that it took a crisis to bring it to the forefront, but I'm excited is not the word, but I'm pleased that community officials, nonprofits, faith communities, the citizenry are coming together and having some smart solutions. We talk about a lot of heavy stuff in this task force. Please know that we appreciate everything that you're doing, but also please recognize that it is not just isolated to Wyandotte County. It is across the entire metropolitan area. And I truly believe that what we do here in Wyandotte County will only benefit the entire metropolitan area and vice versa. So it truly has to be a regional approach that has foundations within the local communities. Everyone be safe going home, or if you're home, be safe.
You as well. Thank you.
Thank you.